Everybody, this is Bobby Carlton. I am from FS Studio, and of course, there is my colleague Pete from Everything Metaverse. And joining us today, we actually have some special guests. We have a awesome team from FS Studio. First of all, we have Annabella and Eliana. They are from our user experience team. They are actually located in Spain. And then joining us is Tim Martin, who is the CEO of FS Studio. And
hey guys.
Today, we're just going to dive right into this conversation. And since we have our user design team here with us, we want to talk about what does that mean for the metaverse, and what does that mean for digital twinning, and how does that impact everything that we do when we approach this idea of the metaverse. So, first off, can we just hear from the two of you, like, what is user design? What does it mean to you? And how does that apply to sort of virtual reality?
Well, actually, I don't know, Annabella, if you want to start or if I do as always. But user design is basically design, as the word it says it, is design based on the user. And I like to use the metaphor of being an architect. Like we as user designs, we just design like a house, but really considering who is going to be living in that house and where we are going to put for example, the windows to get more light, or we are going to put the doors to make it more accessible. And there are many things that we have to decide in order then to dev on our team to build it up and to make it look amazing. But I mean, with this first is like designing based on the user. Those are the most important keys to take into consideration when talking about user experience. I don't know, Annabella, if you agree.
Yeah, of course. We are kind of like building the bridge between what the client wants and what the user expects and what feels comfortable for the user, that at the end is who is going to use the app.
Right. So you talked about the idea of building a bridge, right, between that's where kind of like where Pete kind of comes into this, right, Pete? So where do you fit in this idea of like building that bridge between the user and the experience?
It's a matter of like realizing what is desired using the available technology, but it's also about sort of advising the design team on what can be done and that kind of thing, because it always boils down to a budget, both monetary budget and a time budget. So there's a balance in figuring out what the client wants and what you can actually deliver and what platform and what technologies you need to use to deliver that experience.
Right. I'll ask Tim, since Tim, like, from your perspective, right? I mean, you've been in this industry for a while. You've done a lot of work. So from your perspective, like, how important is that user design process when it comes to digital twinning, at least from your perspective?
Oh, it's super important because, I mean, it all goes back to sort of this empathy roadmap. So you as the designer need to empathize and put yourself in the shoes of the potential user. So you almost deconstruct everything before you build it back up again. And you deconstruct it down to, why do you want it? Why do you want this? What is the benefit? What does success mean? What, at the end of the day, what are we going to be providing for you? For instance, one thing that's I think is really kind of cool is just taking this little experience that we're talking about right here as a little UX journey. So we've been talking about this for a long time. We're like, we really need to make sure that we are meeting more in a collaborative space. We're playing around with different platforms, and the result of what we want as success was we want to be able to all get together, all distributed, and being able to discuss and converse in the most natural way possible. And I just want to kind of go around the room here and kind of explain. So Alan, he's in Croatia. Bobby, you're in New York State.
I'm in New York.
And Annabella and Isabella are in Spain. And Pete, he's in Canada. And I'm in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, you're in Colorado.
So all of us. So I would say for us, super huge success. What we want to be able to do is be able to have a natural conversation where I can basically look you in the eyes and be able to converse in a natural way, and all of us distributed and have a sense of immersion and togetherness and collaboration. And you can feel it. It's something you can feel when you're in VR that is definitely different than in video chat or anything like that. Like this feels like a natural way of interacting. I can look around, I can see people, and this is just the beginning. I mean, this is a pretty bare bones kind of experience.
We
But
can arrange ourselves spatially in a circle like this, which on a monitor with a grid of video thing, and when somebody on a video screen sort of looks up to the left, I don't know if they're looking at you or their cat or
Right.
whatever. But in here, when you're talking, I can look at you and nod. You can see me nodding, and you can see that I'm absorbing what. Or if I go like
Mhm.
this, you go, oh, like what did I just say that was surprising? And there's the immersion of being in a VR space like this and being able to talk with your hands is it's just so much more than any other experience. Like you and I were sort of talking this morning about text chat. It's great for some uses if you just want to, hey, this happened, and whenever you have time to absorb that, that's great.
Yeah.
But there's no nuance. There's no you can't, this is the next best thing to a face-to-face meeting kind of thing.
Totally. And there's no multitasking. Like it's very, very difficult to resist the urge to look at your email, look at chat, yada, yada, yada.
Exactly.
You cannot do that. This is like a distilled amount of time where you're respecting everybody's time. And again, like this is just conversational. This is a conversant sort of experience. But if say we were working on something spatial in front of us and we were designing, say, in like a sculpture, like a physical sculpture, and we had the CAD drawings, we'd imported here, and Annabella and Isabella were talking about how they would create an AR experience interacting with that sculpture. We could sit here and we could try it out, we could prototype it, we could talk about it, we could see how well it works, we could put it in different environments, and we could all collaborate together on that very spatial thing. So, that's the other thing that designers think about. And I don't want to take the words out of their mouths, but you're matching the technology with the use case. And so like within VR and AR, for things like this, like being able to be immersive, being able to sit there and talk, that's super awesome. Then when you layer in the like for us, our medium is very spatial. It's very 3D. It's very, very much like that. So we can sit here and create different experiences, be able to look at them, talk about them. They can be virtual spatial experiences. They could be real life. They could be something that has a real and a simulation component or a digital twin component to it. We can all sit here and look at it and try it, and that itself is huge. And then the cost of iterating on this and in this is much. It's way faster, way quicker. We could sit here and iterate on 5 designs, 5 completely different like designs, and see what works best, what we like the most.
It's something that the architectural folks have been doing for a while, and you sort of say we can bring in 3D model and look at it and whatever, but more, in a bigger scale, we can bring in a 3D model and walk around in it with like when they visualize some of these architectural projects. So you can actually, a bunch of us can go into a building and walk around and maybe go up in the elevator or try the stairs and say, it's too narrow. It looks too narrow from far away, or, not only get the visual element, but get the working element of, can a person fit up there? Like can we carry a box of a certain size up the stairs? Will it fit through the doors? So that's an area where digital twinning is really taken off in the architectural world and visualizing things before you build. But they've actually extended that out into their engineering processes, so that as the work, it's not just the client approved our visual design. Now we can throw that model out. No, that's a living digital twin of that building that the builders, as they're building, are consulting, and the builders are saying, you know what, you didn't leave enough room here for this pipe to go through, so we need to modify it. So that can actually go back to the architect, who can come in and look and say, yes, I approve the change, or maybe I want to add some more drywall or plaster around it to make it look better because you had to increase it or whatever. But that whole model survives beyond the visual now, and it's now an engineering artifact. It's now, very important that they keep that up to date. And that goes to the business people, the costing. How much is it going to cost? I remember when I started out, I worked for a place that sold AutoCAD, and back then it was a big deal to become an AutoCAD reseller. And a lot of the big deal about AutoCAD was that it produced a bill of materials. So you can go do your design, and as you're doing your design, it's going, hey, buddy, that's $1.5 million you just spent on that nice stairwell. Maybe you want to scale it back or something. You know what I mean? So digital twins affect the whole business process of an entity. And well, of course, we're starting with big buildings because they're very expensive. But the tools and the technology that we're developing for that, we use it for cars now. I mean, I'm sure they're using it for washing machines. We've had projects where toy companies are using these kind of processes to design their toys. So digital twins are here to stay.
Well, you're really talking about the idea of virtual presence, right? The virtual presence is, when we, Tim mentioned empathy earlier today, like how empathy was a big part of VR, but empathy and virtual presence, right, combined, right? It now has this like emotional response to a physical space. Like you in VR feel like you're in a physical space. Like I look around, here, and this is a physical room that I am in, and I will navigate around spaces. And so that virtual presence is what helps really sort of create that ability to visualize a room as you're designing or as you're iterating on a project. You physically see how it compares to you in a one-to-one ratio, right? So it's not like you're in a gaming world and it's like a weird ratio. It's a one-to-one ratio. And so you can pick up an object. Of course, you can make it large or small, right? You can in the world they call it exploding, where you make the object come apart, and so you can look at it internally. There's things that we can do in virtual reality that you can't do in the real world. And digital twinning allows us to do all that while we continue to work. And as Tim mentioned earlier, where we could work on 8 different projects very quickly, and there's no distraction of a text message, there's no distraction of your computer, there's no distraction. Like we are engaged in this world, and and as we are all. This is a global meeting. Like we are not, we're in different time zones. We're in different parts of the world. I mean, I didn't have to board a flight to have you guys, see you. And, so I didn't have to show my passport. So there's all these amazing things. And when you think about the return of investment of adopting this type of technology, that corporate, companies and brands, that's where the real value comes in all this. And of course, there's that straight up engagement, right? That we talked about, that idea that you are all in. You're having this emotional response. You're physical in this world.
And to just segue from that, not only are we all in this, but you, the viewer, are here with us. So we have artificial presence. You have no idea if I'm wearing a dirty T-shirt or, I didn't shave today. That's artificial presence. And that digital twinning is going to extend to our self-presence as well. I mean, we get to pick our avatars in here. There's companies coming out like Ready Player Me, where you can go create an avatar that works in multiple digital worlds. So in the future, people will sort of have this digital avatar presence that represents themselves, and it will only get better and better. The newer headsets that are coming out have eye tracking, so they've got little cameras in the headset that are looking at your eyes. You can tell when you blink, when you're moving your eyes around. So in here now, we've kind of got a fake algorithm showing our eyes, and it's not too bad. But in the future, we'll actually really be able to go, no, their heads looking over here, but their eyes are looking there, and that kind of thing. They're also looking at putting cameras that are looking down at your mouth on your headset, so that they can go, well, you're smiling. They can, when you're talking, they can actually make your lips move the way your lips are really moving. And, if you're smiling or frowning or any other facial expressions. So that stuff, that presence, the conveying. They wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't important for us to be able to convey our emotions. I mean, as humans, our facial expressions are easily conveying as much information about what's going on in our heads as our words.
Right. Annabella, quick question for you. From your perspective, what is like the most frustrating part? Like, is there some, when you sort of jump into these worlds, like, is there anything from a design perspective that you might find really frustrating or really challenging when it comes to what the user gets out of a virtual space, or you know what I mean? Like how do you see that?
Yeah, we think that we have to make really good tutorials for entry-level users, as it's really complicated to interact in a new world when you don't know how to do anything. Mm-hmm. So it's something really new for most people, and we need to make sure that the learning curve, as we say in the UX, or
very true.
Yeah, it has to be really easy.
Mm-hmm. And so you're coming in through a VR headset. And Eliane, are you coming from a desktop or VR headset?
Actually, desktop. You would see that I'm a little bit less expressive than you are. But yes, I'm from
desktop. But how important is that, right? Like, a digital twin should be accessible right through a VR through multiple devices. And from your perspective, like jumping in through a desktop, like, what does that mean for like a user base?
Well, actually, you have two different and completely different experiences. I think I'm lacking a big part of this important word that Peter was pointing out, the presence, the feeling of presence. I kind of lack it a little bit. It's still super good, and I still could see your expressions and such. But still, I think having the headset and being, for example, what you were saying, Tim, I could still multitask, being on the. So there are many things that it's breaking the presence aspect of the VR instance. So I think it's.
And that's while you're on the concept of what are the challenges for me as a dev, the challenge is to be able to, if the designer, basically to be able to fuse 4 or 5 different designs, because the designer's going to sort of say, okay, here's an experience if you're wearing a headset. And then here's the experience if you're going in through a 2D portal. But then beyond that, if let's say you're wearing a headset, here's the experience if you're using controllers, which we have to use controllers in alt space. But as we move into the future, here's the experience if you're using hand tracking. And
gloves,
controllers and hand tracking are different enough that they have to be designed as different experiences. You can't just sort of say, you really have to design 2 different experiences.
So I've got an interesting question for the UX folks. So if one of the desires was to make sure that you had maximum engagement of people, and within the headset, that's pretty easy because it's really difficult to multitask. And on the screen, if we created a UX mechanism that indicated that somebody was multitasking or was not completely present, and then you had an on-screen or in environment sort of UX mechanism, I know it creates sort of a public shaming sort of aspect, but what's that seem from a designer's perspective? Like, what's the plus? What's the minus of sort of trying to enforce social engagement, social mores, trying to have positive, like encourage positive behaviors? Like, how would you, if I came to you as a customer and I said, man, it's really important to me in my team meetings that me included, we're all as present and engaged as possible. How would you incorporate that requirement into something like this when somebody was using a screen? What would that look like?
Actually,
maybe
for me,
we can.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think we can inspire in the game world. When you play a game, it's full screen, and you can only stay in the game. Maybe we can use some of that inspiration to help.
That's where my mind went to. I'm wondering.
Yeah, there are tools that you Yeah, there are tools that you could use, as Annabella was saying, at making full screen. That I'm actually now on full screen, but there is like, we are talking about humans and human behavior. So I mean, at the end of the day, we are humans, and I think like, yeah, we should improve the experience. If we make an application that it's nice to be in, that it's comfortable, that it really tries to how to say, tries to encounter at the same time all
Police.
the barriers. It's aware of the barriers that this application has, but still tries to make it as smooth as it can. Then the user itself alone, with its own ethics, let's say, he or she will be able to commit to the work. I mean, that's not something that I think we should control based. We can do these small things, as Annabella was saying, but apart from that, we should be creating nice projects and engaging projects that the employees are really willing to work in.
The reason I bring it up is there's a lot of social implications within VR.
Exactly.
And like trying to promote pro-social behavior. So like we've got personal bubbles we can put in here and make sure that we're like behaving nicely. And for productivity, especially in the corporate world, you want to encourage people to be pro-social and productive, and you want to discourage, unproductive and negative environments. And I think that's definitely a big thing in the VR space that people are trying to tackle from a UX perspective. Is how do we project our social mores and all that stuff into the VR space, so that we're still creating empathy, we're still creating compassion, we're still being respectful, all those kinds of things. Because in an uncontrolled environment, you can have chaos. Like if we left this room and we went to some of the public spaces in alt space VR, especially where some of the little kiddos are hanging out, it's the wild west. And so that could be a really interesting design challenge for the UX team. Is within a corporate environment, you want to, on one hand, you don't want to you don't want it to be 1984, but you also do want to have some kind of pro-social encouragement that people are behaving well.
And this is where engineering role comes in, to advise the design team on what technical tools they might have available to do that kind of thing. So for example, for this particular example, if someone's logging in from a 2D screen, we could enforce that they must have a webcam so that you can see their video. But then beyond that, there are libraries that allow a webcam stream, that allow you to do facial recognition. They allow you to determine where the person's eyes are looking, etc. And there are already like Zoom and some of these. I don't know if Zoom actually does this, but there are video platforms that do exactly that, to determine if you're paying attention and that kind of thing. There's some online classroom stuff, like when you're taking exams online and that, and they do the same thing. They have your webcam, they're watching you, making sure you're not looking down and cheating, and so that is kind of Big Brother-ish, but that is one of the tools that they could use in their arsenal if they're designing the UX.
Yeah, we had to be cautious with that, because it might feel a little invasive for the user, saying like a computer is controlling myself and what I look, and so we had to be cautious.
I would argue.
I agree, and that could be bad for morale. So like if you have to treat adults like adults in a trusting environment. In the same token, it's a really tricky one. It's a really tricky thing.
Well,
it's a bigger conversation.
Like,
this is a philosophical conversation.
You don't have to punish them for not looking. You can reward them for looking.
Right. That's exactly.
At the end of a meeting, you can say, "Hey, your engagement was 85%, and someone else, your engagement was only 30%."
Oh, gamify.
That's awesome. That's gamification of like pro-social behaviors. Yeah.
No, not only gamifying towards what Peter is saying. Like, why reinforcing the bad part when you can also reinforce and learn from the good part? I mean, if you just make an application, what I was saying, if you make an application that is smooth enough, that is super easy, that is, that it's great and helps you to do your job easier, and it's intuitive. And if it's an application that it's that the user itself would like to be in that environment, would like to be more active, would like to do more stuff. If it's a gamified thing, also it will want to learn or gain more things. I mean, why think on the negative reinforce instead of the positive one?
Prosocial behavior, Tim.
Yes, that's a great, because if you think about traditional offices, right?
Anti-social behavior, Tim.
Yeah. If you think about traditional offices, like we have these these farms of desks, and they have these low walls. So I mean, you can kind of keep an eye on is someone being productive, are they working? And we also have these programs where we do sort of the most productive employee of the week got like a pizza party or something. So we do have these sort of reward type of programs in the real world, and so bring in those ideas, right? I mean, I think that's a great idea, right? Like let's reward people in a sense for paying attention. Let's whether who's been involved. And I mean, even in school, when you look at like K through 12, you get those teacher comments like this student was engaged, this student was participating. Like participation, as we're told in college, is half of the grade. And so
the best part,
why can't that idea, participation, if we gamify it in a virtual world, or productivity, again, the whole idea of thinking about digital twinning in the metaverse, especially from a business point of view or a brand point of view, is creating a platform with a return on investment, better productivity, and learning the process and procedures or learning information, but in collaboration. But here we are globally collaborating. So why not bring in those K through 12 and college like participation's part of it? I think that's really cool.
I think the really cool thing, I really love what Eliane was saying, is the most sophisticated way to do this is to encourage pro-social and positive behaviors and do it through the environment they're in, not through like reporting, not through like really clunky things like you earn cookies or rewards or medals. It's because you've designed the experience to promote pro-social behaviors. So it's like you're encouraged. You're encouraged because of the way this is designed to interact, to build positive relationships or positive experiences. And because I think anything that sniffs of sort of being parochial and even like reporting or things like that, I think people sniff that. People are smart. They sniff that stuff out, and it hurts morale, and it creates a distrust. It actually is. It works against you more than for you. So it's a really cool problem, and it's philosophical. It's philosophical, but it's like one of the big issues that people are sitting here figuring out in VR.
But and of course, that comes down to user design, the user experience.
And also, we are. Yeah, that's exactly what you were saying. What you were about to say, Bobby. We are humans, and at the end of the day, this is called a twin, a digital twin. So we cannot avoid being human. So the bad human is gonna be bad, even if you block him or block her to be bad, And the good one is gonna be good. So I mean, in that you should have a good human resources to choose your employees. And of course, if we work from the UX team towards making an awesome app, then of course that together will make them the most out of it. Great workers.
But that's
together
definitely
with a great application.
something that the design team has to take into account, is the fact that there are bad humans, and not even necessarily bad humans, but what is your model for people logging in? Do they have to create an account? Do they have to provide an email, a credit card? That's a little more, there's a less chance that they're going to misbehave if you can track who they really are.
Remember that Black Mirror episode where they're going around and everybody is getting likes and dislikes, and when you get so many dislikes, you can't even get an Uber. That was
that's I remember that
one.
One.
Dark side.
A public like or a public dislike, I need to be able to control my account and say, I don't care if 1,000,000 people like that avatar, they are harassing me, or I don't want to see them, and you need to be able to like block people that you don't want to see. It's the same on all the social media when, like all the experts basically say, as soon as someone makes a shitty comment to you, just block them. Don't waste any time on them,
Yeah.
It's a
And
matter
we
of
need those
respect.
same tools in a place like this.
Oh, totally. And I think
It's a
the thing
matter of
that
respect
so
and responsibility. Sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
oh no. Well, I think that's totally true. I think the thing is like, and this is the fun part about like product design and UX design is like it's the scoring biases that you want to create when you're creating a product. So for instance, if it's a productivity app for enterprise, you're going to bias productivity, collaboration, and pro-social behaviors heavily. And that'd be the context of that one. However, if there was another one, say like a client came to us and like, like they wanted to create a virtual club and it's like punk music or something like that, it's going to bias heavily towards freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and all that stuff. It's going to be this, and you want it to be create. So probably creativity is like the North Star, and freedom. These would be North Star concepts, and then you've got to create mechanism. You have to create these mechanisms that work well in there to allow for freedom of expression, but also protect people so they don't get exploited or whatever. And that would be a really wild challenge. And that's where like some of the stuff Pete's talking about, like,
yeah, and if it's a business, if it's an enterprise, like for the project that I'm working on, which is an enterprise thing, the only people that will be in that world are employees of that company, and if they misbehave, they've got real world consequences to deal with. So you don't have to be as concerned in a scenario like that with providing the tools as in the scenario you're talking about, where you want to let people kind of go as free as possible, but not everybody's gonna.
You got life or death consequences. Like they could lose an arm, they could get bug zapped. Like like the consequences are really bad. So that really pushes the bias towards the pro-social stuff, because they could really be hurt if they don't listen.
I mean, even think about like if you think about like in the real world, right? If we're looking at a web, I mean, businesses get Yelp reviews, businesses get they get the Amazon review. So what if there was a virtual platform that had like a blockchain type of review where you were in virtual reality working, and I could see like, Pete's got like 4.5 stars. Like, why did he get a half a star? Like,
well, what would be really cool is if your avatar was dynamic. So if your avatar, if you had like, think of the angel and devil on your shoulder, and so if your avatar reflected like your current behavior, so the more pro positive it is, your avatar would actually show that with. And like it could be like, okay, so just for the sake of being simple and modest, it could be like halos and stuff like that. And if you're bad, you get horns.
Yeah.
But the thing would be really cool is if people could.
Gray.
Yeah, totally. Well, if people could actually, so the worst would be if you're being negative. But here's the funny thing. So the really cool thing is if you're being naughty, people could vandalize your avatar, because that's what you really wouldn't want. You wouldn't want people like messing up your avatar.
Be careful. Like I'm maybe these end up in a philosophical issue and in an ethical one. I mean, towards where we want to take technology toward that, and the level of freedoms that we think as human beings we deserve. So I will go towards respect and towards responsibility, and do things that improve and encourage those two instead of the other one. That's at least from my side of how I see life. I think
that the problem with that idea may be that maybe being bad makes it could be like kind of fun for some people.
Yeah, that's right.
Like that, getting the devil board like bigger, and that we shouldn't make that like fun to follow.
And also, we are not bad and good all the time, and it depends on the situations if it's bad and good. So I mean, that point Pete brought, it's like super complicated. Who is in charge of saying this is bad, this is not? I think there's a huge philosophical step that should be discussed when being like when pushing towards a technology that is it's a really beginner or is developing. I think this kind of actually what just happened now, it's super useful and should be discussed more often about the ethic points and the regarding technology and human life. I think this is
something
important.
that's sort of been proven on all social platforms is whenever they create a tool to help you defend yourself, it always gets turned into a sword. So if you create some mechanism where I can say, oh, that avatar is bad, then gangs of people will form and they'll, what do they call it? Brigade, like vote brigading in Reddit.
Yeah, that's
A
true.
band will group together and say, we don't like that person. And then 20 of them will go and downvote you, and all of a sudden your reputation's crap. So reputation systems like that, they work well when they're positive. You know, if you, you're going to get 20 people, you're going to get 20 of your friends to band together and upvote you, but that's what you're going to do anyway. You know what I mean?
Hey, can I just get meta here for a second?
Interesting.
This whole this whole discussion that we had is a perfect example of a collaborative process that is almost unique in a VR space. Like this whole back and forth that we had and this whole discussion around ethics, I would say that the nature and the quality of this discussion it was more qualitative and had better quality than if we had done this in email, if we had done this in text, if we'd done this in even video chat. Like this, the meta aspect of what we've just done here is a really, really good example of one of the strengths of VR.
Of course, it feels more natural.
Yeah. Sorry, Bobby.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, but you still get the hear me problems, I guess. Still,
but you get those in Zoom. You get those in other technologies. So
exactly.
Everywhere.
And I mean, even in real life, I've done this stuff in real life, and it's like, hey, sorry, the cameras. I need to recharge the batteries. Everybody take a 20-minute break. So the problems happen no matter what the medium is.
It's true.
It's just different mix of problems.
But even if you think about that, I mean, problems happen in the real world, right? I mean, we have issues, like even, and I mean, it's really just overcoming different types of issues, and digital twinning and metaverse, you know, whether we're using it for the workforce, whether we're using it for warehouse management, you know, whether we're using it for automation of a project, you know, or doing something that there'll always be some sort of bump, and it was just a matter of how we overcome it. And again, this happens in the real world. I mean, if we, you know, back in the 80s, you know, if they, you know, so back years ago, I used to work at Lowe's. I did work as a loading sod and everything, and we had these trucks that they put in propane tanks to move them around. And you know, the problem was sometimes they'd run out, and that was a problem. And there's really no difference, sort of like if we encounter a virtual problem, and it's just how we sort of, you know, how we deal with that. And that comes from the design side, right? I mean, that's from the user experience side, whether you're a worker or someone observing.
Speaking of piecing, I've got to piece out. Just look at my calendar. Speaking of multitasking, I just looked at my calendar. Whoops, and I got a skedaddle. So, see you guys.
Do see how immersive this is? Time just goes.
Yeah. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so I guess this is where we quickly thank everybody for joining in. We want to thank all of you for listening, and of course, we want to thank, you know, our team here at FS Studio for joining us today, because I think this was actually really awesome, and I hope to have you know, more people, and you know, because Pete and I we love talking to people, so you know, having everybody here was great. So we just wanted to say thanks, everybody. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.